on to The Swab with Georgie Carroll. We all know nurses have the best stories, so why don't you come have a listen? Without further ado, Indi McDowell. Indi, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, Indi, I believe you're in Portugal at the moment. Is that correct?
That is, yes. I've been here a week now.
You're meant to be in Ethiopia, but you're actually in Portugal. So, have you catfished me? What's going on? Why are we in Portugal at the minute?
No, so I am normally in Ethiopia. That's all true. I'm actually on my way to Chad in Western Africa via Portugal.
Not exactly on the way there, is it? But
Not quite.
is that because you have family there, or?
No, it's part of a bigger project, of course, to do with linking up independent midwives across the world. So we've got an organisation in Ethiopia, and I am the international liaison. So I'm doing my international liaisoning at the moment.
That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool title. Not only, I think we should point out, just in case we weren't already impressed by the title, that you're doing all this whilst internationally traveling around in a pandemic when no one's allowed to go anywhere, and you're also carrying your 2-year-old with you. Is that correct?
Well, to be honest, he actually doesn't let me carry him anywhere. He's very much on his own at the moment. So it's more sort of chasing after a 2-year-old. But yes, that pretty much sums it up.
I would love to start with your adventures in. Do you class it as an adventure? What is it? Is it a vocation? Is it an adventure? How did you become an international liaison for a non-governmental organisation? Is it?
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
So how did you and a not-for-profit organisation, which, from what I've read, is to improve midwifery care throughout developing countries. Is that it in a nutshell?
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, we're very much based in Ethiopia. But I guess my role is linking up with other independent midwives around the world. So eventually, everybody together, hopefully, there will be a move towards improving access to independent midwifery everywhere.
Okay, go on. Independent midwifery. I didn't know there was a
Yes.
choice. What does it mean?
Of
What's an independent
course.
one? What Indi the independent midwife? Yeah.
Exactly. It's about finding midwives who are not necessarily bound by the sometimes fairly irrational guidelines and protocols of government bodies. So it means we're a little bit more flexible with the care we can offer. It's very much about centering midwifery back with women, back in families, and helping women to take charge of the experience, the birthing experience. And sometimes, you go into a hospital, you get lost in the system, you're just another face. And there's not always that chance
Not so much a
to,
face in midwifery, is it?
well, quite.
Um,
I was going to
yes.
go there, and I was like, no, it's a bit early in the morning for that. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the move of the moment, that lots of women are seeking better, holistic alternative away from the scary COVID-ridden hospitals.
So you're trained in the traditional manner, but you're not
Yes,
held to a governing body.
exactly. I mean, we are still. So at the moment, I'm in Ethiopia. I'm the only international midwife, expat midwife, and all of the rest of the team in Ethiopia are local. So they trained in local hospitals, and they are all licensed by the government. So we're all legitimate midwives,
Right.
but choosing to work outside of the government system.
Go you lot, Mavericks. So I can understand why that would be important and I can understand why that would have its heart in Ethiopia as well,
Yeah.
where it would be almost impossible. I've been to Ethiopia myself. I've been to
Have
Addis Ababa.
you?
I d- have.
Ah,
I had,
okay.
well, before I became a nurse, I wanted to be an aid worker.
Okay.
So I went with one of those sort of Ponzi schemes run by, I'm going to say, the Catholic Church, where they make you fundraise and then they take you out there and then you have no use to anyone.
Okay.
So I kind
Yeah,
of,
yeah, classic. Yep.
yes, so it wasn't as a healthcare person then, it was as a teaching English as a foreign language. And
Fabulous. Good.
I'm not that great myself. But yeah, I've been to Ethiopia. I was surprised and amazed and shocked by lots of things there.
How did you find it?
Well, I suppose if having because I was 19, I was so
Okay,
green, right?
young, yeah.
And possibly still very much just left school having learnt about the Great British Empire.
Ah.
So possibly quite colonial at the time still, where I
Which
was
would be
going to go on
interesting in
study tour.
Ethiopia, given that was the country that was never colonized.
I know, but I was
Mm,
very, when I look back, that was my mindset. I was going there, with that kind of attitude, and
okay.
then also so unaware that they were in a civil war,
Yeah.
at the time that had been raging on for decades,
That
and
was in the
I
80s or the 90s, were you there?
I would reckon it'd been the 90s. There was
90s.
a
So that was the
coup.
war with Eritrea at that time.
That's it. There was a coup on at the time, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I said it in the Brad Chesham interview, but I was living in a nunnery, and one of the nuns said, "There's a coup planned tomorrow," and I thought that was some kind of party. I thought
I mean, of a fashion.
I thought it was. I was like, "What do we wear to a coup?" And but I was really because I'd gone over to teach English with the very basic teach English as a foreign language skill set, and
Mm.
but I was teaching it to teachers who could already speak English. That wasn't the issue. It was how to the infrastructure of an education system that needed to be taught at that point.
I mean, still does. The Ethiopian education system is incredible. There are so many. So I could talk about it for a very long time, but the way the students are taught in Ethiopia is about memorizing this incredible, massive information and then regurgitating it. And you see that in the midwives and the nurses. So their ability to recount a paragraph in the textbooks is incredible, like word for word, incredible. But their ability to problem solve, if it deviates anywhere outside of what was written in the paragraph, leaves a little lacking.
And that's not what us independent midwives are about now, is it?
But I mean, that's not what any midwife is about, really, any healthcare professional. But,
Yes.
you know,
So So you are, and the other thing that I noticed in Ethiopia was, I suppose I'd been bombarded with very much the rural images and the Live Aid images. So
yeah.
when I went to Addis Ababa, and it was this huge city, that wasn't what I expected either. But you're not in the city, are you? You're in Arat, I think, which is
I am in Guragi Zone. So Guragi Zone is south central west Ethiopia. It's about 6 hours away from Addis. Yes, out in the rural lands. We're up on a
so.
mountaintop.
So how long had you been? How long have you been there?
I first went out in 2016, so 5 years.
I feel like I could listen to every story you ever tell about this. So where do you want to start? Like it's not like I could come up with some questions. It's not something I've got experience of. So you've got anything from when you first get there, what you're feeling. You've obviously had a baby in that time.
Yes,
Let's
yeah.
talk to me. How do you tell this at dinner parties?
Do you know, actually, well, with COVID, there are no such thing as dinner parties anymore. So I, I try also not to talk too much about me because I'm so
Okay,
uninteresting compared to all of the midwives who I work with, to be honest.
do that then. If
Like,
that's how you see this, if that's your perspective of it. So what
yeah,
what
it is. I guess it is. For lots of midwives and nurses, they always dream of going and working abroad for a little bit, and particularly in rural Africa because it's got such a hold over us for some reason. And everything you kind of hope it's going to be and worry that it's going to be, it does both way more than you could ever imagine. But always it comes back to the incredible, incredible people who are there. And I have been so, so lucky. I started off in a hospital, and like you, I spent a year living with Catholic missionary nuns, which in itself is a whole podcast episode, let me tell you.
isn't
Um,
it?
oh, God. Anyway, yeah. Um,
I remember from the two resounding memories of the nuns was one was that they loved watching nun films.
okay.
So we did watch Nuns on the Run and Sister Act. Um, and I loved that they loved those films. And the other one, there was a pregnant nun, which
Well,
surprised me,
that's unexpected. Mm.
isn't it? The Lord works
Yes,
in mysterious ways.
quite.
So go on, you're living in this nunnery.
My nuns didn't watch films. We didn't often have internet, so that kind of puts a dampener. Oh, or electricity even. So that puts a dampener on watching films. So they're a Catholic missionary order who set up a hospital, and they've been in Ethiopia for 50 something years. And individually, two of them have actually literally been there for 50 something years. So they're incredible.
Hmm.
And they have, they've been in Ethiopia through it all, through the Derg, when there was the horrible, horrible famine as well, the Live Aid famine. They've seen it all, they've done it all. They're incredible. But
So
they do
born
live
in
very
Ethiopia.
no. German, Indian, from all over.
Okay. Yeah.
They just happened to have been in Ethiopia for a very long time. And they were incredible. And the medical director of the hospital was also a nun. So I spent a lot of my time with her. And she was just so generous and so encouraging, but also very, very I think it's part of how they are taught to view the world. But it was kind of like any of the difficult things that we came up against, and we came up against a lot, you had to kind of deal with the fallout yourself. So you had to deal with your own feelings, and your own sadness or grief or anger or whatever it was that you were feeling because of the situation. You had to process that yourself. It wasn't on anyone else, it was on you. So there wasn't very much hand holding, which is kind of what I'd expected from nuns, but not at all. It was suck it up and get on with it.
That is not what you would expect from nuns.
No,
And you're saying
no.
it is, yeah. So you had to. What were some of the things you had to work through? What were the?
Oh, it was part of very rural, very poor Ethiopia, particularly when you're dealing with obstetrics, is women and babies die often. It's not uncommon in any way. And when when they've come to the hospital that you're working in, you feel this moral, clinical obligation towards these women to do everything you can, and then you do everything you can and they die anyway. And that's always very, very difficult. And that's
Yes.
where, I think in a way, if I'd had somebody there going, oh, it's okay, here, have a cry, hold my hand, you're going to be okay, da 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 da, it almost becomes a bit overwhelming. But if you kind of give them the chance to get on with it yourself and learn how to deal, it's all about reflective practice. You see, they told us this in university and we mocked them, but in reality, there's something to it.
You'd have a fair bit to reflect on. I mean, if you don't even have electricity, not that electricity
No.
is, mind you, I've never done normal midwifery. But I can
Well,
imagine that a lot of the equipment in
yeah.
there is useful.
Electricity, yeah, it definitely has its value. No, it's just there's no higher level of care available. So there's no
Can't even
very
boil a
minimal
kettle.
drugs, no intensive care, no
Mm.
blood banking system, for example. So when things go wrong, they go wrong fast and they
Oh,
go
of
wrong
course.
irreversibly. So that was I spent my first year and a half there. And whilst I was there, I was also under the tutelage of an amazing midwife called Atsede. Now she is the one I could talk about forever. So she was the first midwife to be trained in the area. Before that, it was the traditional midwives who were attending lots of deliveries, or nurses who'd happened to see a few. So she was the first properly trained midwife, and for many, many years, the only properly trained midwife. So she is this incredible font of knowledge, and she really has seen it all and done it all. She knows everything, and she took me under her wing. And with her, I got the chance to do, everything we'd learned about in university, manage all the emergencies, all the various weird and wonderful things that babies and mums can do. And then after my post actually in the hospital was helping to establish the neonatal unit. So after we'd built that and trained up some staff, they were able to take over. I was at a bit of a loose end. So I was working as a midwife then, just a straight up midwife, with that city a lot of the time. And we both kind of thought, this hospital is amazing, it saves lives, but that's kind of the bare minimum of what it does. So there was something like 5,000 deliveries a year and 2 midwives on shift. So every day you're seeing a lot of deliveries, but it's women come in on the backs, deliver, go off again. And we didn't like that.
Yeah.
So we thought, right, we're going to break away and open a birth centre where we can do it our way. And so we did that. We both left our positions at the hospital.
Who looked after the people having the babies then?
Oh, there are other midwives.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, other midwives.
All right.
And then
Thank God.
and we set up our birth centre. And so we've been doing that now for almost 3 years.
So if I'm living in that, is it a village or a town? If I'm living in that town, if there's 5,000 babies, I'm hoping it's a town rather than a village.
It's definitely
Who decides whether I go to the birthing centre?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who decides if I go to see you at the birthing centre or just have it in the hospital? And does many people still have them at home?
No, home births are illegal in Ethiopia, which, like, as a British midwife, really got my back up
What?
initially. But actually, yeah, no, 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 wait. Because actually, given the circumstances of what the homes are like, I completely understand. I would not recommend having a baby at home in Ethiopia. You've also got the fact that the distance.
Illegal's a bit harsh, isn't it? What if you can't get out? The people are
Oh
always
no, well
having them in
that's obviously
toilets.
fine. We've delivered several babies in people's homes. Like emergent, birth is birth. If it's gonna happen, there's only so much you can do about it. You can't
Yes.
plan to have a home birth. That's what I should say.
Oh, when you use the word plan, do
Yeah.
Ethiopian women have birthing plans? Is it as sort of is
No.
each birth as
No, 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 no.
well thought out and celebrated as they tend to be in the Western world?
No, it's very different. So I think this is like, and this is something I really notice as well. But essentially, women, they don't even really announce a pregnancy. You just wait until the bump is big enough for everyone to realize you're actually pregnant rather than you've just had, a really big meal. And
Yeah.
then, the birth itself, I don't know. It's very different. It's very, very
What
practical.
can I ask? I don't know. Can I ask the sort of age of the women that are pregnant? Is it the full range? Like from all the way through a woman's menstrual lifetime. Is that the time that women will be having babies, or do people
Yeah,
tend to wait for
absolutely.
a certain time? Or
No, 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 no. So, like in Ethiopia, nobody knows their age. Your age is not particularly important. So, nobody actually knows how old they are. So, if you see statistics from the Ethiopian government that ever include ages, it's all nonsense because nobody knows. But anyway, um, I can't say that. So,
yeah,
we'll gloss over that. But women have babies from quite young until they can't physiologically have babies anymore. And normally, women have sort of 6, 7 babies. That's quite normal.
6 or 7 babies.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. You went with the one so far. Do you mind if we talk about that? I'm so intrigued. I know I
No,
know you
not at
said you
all.
didn't really want to talk about you, but you had a baby in all of this.
I did. Yes, 2 years ago. 2 and a bit years ago now.
Well, yeah, we know how
Yeah.
old that one is. Um, so did you follow that format of just wait until you showed, or would you think you were way more relaxed or natural
Okay.
about it than you would have been had you not been it?
So I did very much follow that. I didn't tell anybody that I was having a baby. Anybody. Until he was 2 days old.
What? Oh, please talk through that.
Yeah. So it was an email that went back to the UK to my parents saying, "This is your grandson." It was my father's birthday. He was born a
Oh,
few days before my father's birthday. So it was an email saying, "Happy birthday. P.S. This is Raphael. This is my son."
oh my goodness. Oh, oh, that would make me cry if I saw it on YouTube, and I'm sure no grandparent does anything but be overjoyed when they see a grandchild. Is
No,
that how it
absolutely,
happened?
exactly, absolutely, entirely, entirely. It was, I'm very close to my parents. They've always been my biggest champions. I've got nothing but love and good things to say about them. But Ethiopia had just come through 2018, which was this huge state of emergency. Lots of fighting, lots of deaths. The American tourist was killed, and in any
Mm.
case, we're so rural. They knew full well how difficult um, childbirth could be in Ethiopia. I knew they would worry. I didn't want. I didn't want them to worry. It was me in some strange way trying to protect everybody from being afraid for me. And also, I think if they had turned around and said, "We're really not happy with this. Please come back to the UK," they'd never tell me to do anything. But if they asked me, I would find it very difficult to say no. And I knew in my heart I wanted to have my baby in Ethiopia.
That's an incredible story. I love it. Did sorry, Adsedo did
I'd
Adsedo
say they.
deliver the baby? Were you?
She did. Yes.
Hmm?
Yeah. So she
Oh,
was my midwife. I had the baby at the clinic. She was there through every stage. And then afterwards, I had a huge bleed. I had to go to the hospital and have emergency surgery. So it all went tits up as it always does. Um, but it was still the right decision. I still stand by it being the right decision.
oh, yeah. You are. proof of the product you're pushing, really, aren't you? The you know,
Well,
you
exactly,
really, that's so incredible.
yeah.
And then there's something, isn't there, that has pushed you to live this differently to how you were, because you were actually Australian to begin with.
Never Australian, only living in Australia. I spent my
Okay.
parents, their work took us all over the place. So for 5 years, I was in Sydney.
Yeah.
My sort of formative teenage years, I was in Sydney. Yeah, and then
Yes.
various other
And
places.
then the
So I guess
UK.
no, and then where did we go then? I can't even remember. Off somewhere else. But
You touched on it a bit that you'd worked in the health system in a Western country and had been uh, a little bit disillusioned by the restrictions and the lack of autonomy and
yeah, well, do you
uh,
know? I never wanted to be a midwife. I never intended to be a midwife. It was never part of the plan. I did anthropology first.
okay, so that's study of society, yeah.
So yeah, culture, people, study of people. So after I finished that degree, I went out to Central Asia, to Kyrgyzstan, to work with the UN, which was amazing, incredible. But it was being there that kind of made me realize that lots of these big organizations are putting into place policies that don't necessarily work on the ground because the people writing them had no practical understanding of what it was like. So my thinking was, right, if we're ever going to make any change globally to, because the maternal and neonatal morbidity and mortality statistics have dropped hugely over the last couple of decades, but now they've kind of plateaued. And if we're looking at ways to
Mm.
continue to improve women's health, it needs to be led by people who really understand what's going on. And from my fairly limited, granted, experience, the policies and various things that were being written by people sitting behind desks, not by people, at the bedside. So I was like,
Yeah.
right, I'm going to get to the bedside. I'm going to train as a midwife, understand what's going on, and see if that makes a difference. And then got caught up in being a midwife. And 5 years later, I'm still a midwife.
And you can see that for the foreseeable future as well, I should imagine. It'd be very hard to change, even if you wanted to, with a 2-year-old and all the international travel. But that's where your heart is it? With these helping these women have healthier babies and easier
Yeah,
births.
I think definitely now that's shifted a little bit. So obviously, it's being there for a birth is magical. There's no other way to put it. It
Mm.
is incredible experience. But what I find more rewarding or interesting now is the role that midwives can have more broadly. So I think we've spent so long being kind of shunted aside and just dealing with birth, which is incredible if you think about literally everyone is born. So how is this not? How are midwives not the most respected profession in the whole world? Not that I'm not biased at all, but you know what I mean. So I think now
Mm.
I want to look. I'm certainly that's what we've been trying to do with the midwives as part of the organization in Ethiopia is look at ways of encouraging midwives to accept that they can be so much more than quote unquote just a midwife. So they can be the community leaders. They can start to look at public health projects and and all sorts of things like vaccinations, family planning. All of this falls under the remit of midwifery. And instead of concentrating on purely clinical, the scope for midwives to really take positions in leadership is there, and they just need to be shown a way of helping it to become reality. So that's kind of where I think I'm interested in now.
You've combined the anthropology and the making of the babies, the catching of the babies.
Exactly.
I love it. You are. You will hate to hear this about yourself, but you are incredibly impressive as a person.
Very kind. Thank you.
Incredibly
I've had a lot of
principled,
help.
an incredibly different thinker, which I suppose comes from living in all these different places.
Yeah,
And it's off to Chad next, I believe. Is that correct?
yes, that is the plan. Off to Chad for some teaching. And again, this is part of
To do the
developing.
same thing.
This is actually more specific. Well, actually, kind of yes and no. So it's there's an organisation, the Perinatal Rescue Network, that trains midwives in resuscitation programs. So resuscitating babies at birth. And I guess that is the same thing. It's about upskilling midwives, but it's definitely more clinical rather than the esoteric other.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap this. I could speak to you forever. We're going to have to wrap this up very shortly. There's two things that are going to ping in my inbox after this.
Yeah.
One will be, is there any way in which people can help, or is it something that people donate to? Is there any place that you want people to go to learn more about this organisation?
Yes, yeah, they do. So because of how difficult the roads are, we don't have paved roads or anything like that. We are at the moment trying to fundraise for an ambulance. So we lost a patient. We lost two patients over the last 2 years that we wouldn't have done had we had an ambulance. So at the moment we transfer in a tuk-tuk, and in the rainy season we don't even do that. We have to walk. So as you can imagine, walking with a bleeding baby or a bleeding mother or a baby who can't breathe is not easy.
I wasn't bleeding. I just couldn't walk when I was in labour. So yeah, where can we send money? Where do we give us a website to go to, Laura?
We have a Just Giving page. I think it's just called the Midwives Ambulance, and we have.
Oh, I know where you can find this, people. You go on Indi Midwife. If you've got Instagram, you go on Indi Midwife, INDIE Midwife, and then go on the Linktree link at the top, and then you can find. And I'm going to be going there donating afterwards. The second one is definitely midwives who want to get involved in this type of growth and lifestyle. Where do you start?
So we get a lot of messages from midwives saying, can they come and stay with us and volunteer with us? And it's something we'd love to say yes to, but I live with Sedi and her family, so there are 8 of us in this house, and we just don't have room for anyone else at the moment. So that's why we're having to say no. And also there's no English spoken, so unless whoever's volunteering.
So not necessarily come out there, but to be part of the independent midwife movement, I would suppose you would call it.
Midwives who are interested there, it depends where you are, I guess, a little. So for those in the UK, there are the independent midwives in the UK. There's so many organisations all over the world that give a chance to get involved. But it is, I think even if you're a midwife working in a hospital, you can still adhere to the principles of midwifery. It's just a matter of remembering them and not getting lost in the system.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to us today, Indi. Good luck with whatever you do next. It's going to be incredible, whatever you do. And just changing the world, one baby at a time.
Here's hoping.
Thanks so much for talking today, Indi.
You've been listening to The Swab with Georgie Carroll. That's me podcast, but I also have live comedy shows too, and I've written a book called Off the Charts. If you want to know more about those things, please hit me up on my socials. I've got a Facebook called Georgie Carroll, and I've got an Insta called Nurse Georgie Carroll. I've got a website called georgiecarroll.com. Also, if you've got anybody that you think would be a great guest on The Swab, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for listening, and that's all for today from The Swab.